I'd like to hear about the fight to save Tokitae, because I thought that was amazing to follow.
If you like what we're doing and you want more stories about orcas and the environment, why not support us on Patreon?
One of the handful of prominent carvers in the Lummi Nation received a message from a young girl on the East Coast that received a message from Tokitae. And she had called out through that triangulation to the Lummies to bring her home.
Wow.
I was told that we need to gear up. It's an obligation to bring this girl home. I hadn't heard of it before, like 2017. But Lummies were participating in the commemoration of her capture in Penn Cove in 1970 for decades. So I worked with the appropriate people in the tribe to develop a way to get her out of that old tank and get her back to her mother, who's now the matriarch of the L-Pod, Ocean Sun. So we have developed a series of levers to get her out of Miami. And she's still in Miami. I know that she's still in Miami. And we're going to be in Miami at the end of this month, again, to stand in front of Seaquarium and the rest of the country and demand her release. And we're doing other things, too. It's not just appealing to Seaquarium to do the right thing, because they're not going to listen to that. But we have levers in different places, and we're prying her out of there, and I expect she'll be home in 18 months. Now, there are those who will say, she's 51 years old. She's too old. She's about midlife for a killer whale female. We're actually working with the man who was her first caretaker when she was 4 years old. And I said, she's been in captivity, basically alone, in a tank 80 feet in diameter and 20 feet deep in chlorine in Miami, and she still sings her song every night, and she races around showing life force. Who is this? And she said, I'll tell you something, Kurt. I've worked with killer whales for 40 years. I've never seen one like Tokitae. One of the councilmen here, his name is Fred Lane. He's on the government. He's also a spirit dancer, which means the old ways of connecting to the animistic world around us. And he is going to be in Miami with the totem pole that was carved for her. And he went to Miami Seaquarium last year when I was with him, and he stood at the side of the tank. And across the other side of the tank, Tokitae was facing in the opposite direction, being fed by her handlers. And Tokitae did a 180, came straight over to where he was standing, and just hung in the water while he sang his song.
Wow.
There is another, there really is, anthropologists tell you this, historians will tell you this. Social scientists, some will agree. There is no universal world-making process. There isn't one universal meta-narrative as to what is true. Science cannot ultimately prove itself any more than Lummi oral history can. There is no proof of the proof. Everything comes down at some point, whether it's electricity or killer whales swimming across a tank to greet a relative. Everything is possibly true depending on the angle of view. That sounds like hopeless irrealism. It's not just relativism. I'm not talking in those terms. These are what they call worldviews with a perspicuous order. They have an inner logic. They're not just made up stuff. And part of the relation to Tokitae, part of the obligation to her and her family, her mother, her pod, the extended family, that moral obligation is grounded in a cosmology that believes, as we believe in electricity and evolution and all that stuff, it is believed they are people, as we are people. And that is a perspectivism, it's called in historical terms. A historian will call that perspectivism. But it's not just like, okay, anything you want to think is true. It's not that way. This way they're talking about, this way of world making, is, some would say, the only thing left that can save us from ourselves. Because apparently scientism, married up to financial capitalism, isn't sustainable. It can't solve the problems it's created on its own. It needs other ways of understanding why things are the way they are. How did they come to be? What is our role in that? We need this knowledge. We need to understand, and that's one of the things about bringing Tokitae home. When Tokitae comes home, Mark, and she will gradually be rehabilitated, learn how to, again, exercise that muscle memory of catching fish, which it's in there. And she will at one point hear her mother out in the water, because they can hear up to a mile, 2 miles away easily underwater, sometimes 10. And she will reunite with her mother. And when they reunite, it's been observed, they breach. They come out of the water together. There's going to be a moment in the history of the Salish Sea when mother and daughter are reunited. And my feeling is, all of us who know about that will remember exactly what we were doing at that moment, and the Salish Sea will never look the same again.
I love that. Yeah, I just love that. And it's amazing to picture it.